and I teach at a small high school in Western Maryland. I'm a social studies teacher, and I've been using GradeCam for about 6 years. And so I have used GradeCam primarily for obviously all of my grading, but I thought, now it has revolutionized my grading. How can it also revolutionize other parts of my classroom? And so in reflecting on that question, I thought, what is my other weakness? Because of course grading was my time, took all my time. What is my other weakness? How can this save me time in other areas? And so I thought about classroom management, and I thought, oh my gosh, that timely feedback can help my classroom management and help create an amazing classroom culture. And that is my goal as a teacher, is to create that positive classroom culture. And so I put those two together, and it has revolutionized my classroom. So as any good teacher does, we always reflect. And I also reflect on my time as a student. And I thought about, what assignments do I remember all of my teachers taking forever to grade? And those, of course, are those essays, projects, and unit tests. And I would get super frustrated because I thought, why can't you get this in on time? And then I thought, what have been the assignments that had taken me forever to grade? And I fell victim as a teacher to the same things that I judged my teachers on, and I probably shouldn't have judged them so harshly. And then I became an AP teacher and realized I was spending 2 weeks with my Scantrons, grading my Scantrons, and then hand compiling all of that data by standard, by student. And it took me forever, but it was data that I needed to be able to better teach my students in my AP courses. And then so that led me to that question of how would providing students with feedback in a day or even in minutes have changed the outcome of student learning. And I felt like that could be transformative. That could create less test anxiety, but at the same time create a lot more trust with my students. If I'm transparent, if I am building that rapport, this is my tool that I could use to do that. So as a social studies teacher, I love the research, and I went into a lot of the educational research, and I realized that the 4 main themes that come out when you research a positive classroom culture or creating a positive classroom culture was trust, empowerment, acceptance, and challenge. And so these are the things, of course, that we want to do with our students, that we want to teach our students to get to that point, is to feel that in every single class that they go into. And so I use GradeCam to do those things. So I first started with, of course, the timely feedback. So John Hattie, who is the research educator at the Melbourne Institute of Education, says that feedback should help students understand where they are in their learning compared to where they are meant to be. And so often, I fell victim to that piece of I am purely using feedback to just tell kids where they are in a unit exam or where they are in a project, but not giving them feedback every single day, and really timely feedback, because I felt like that would take a lot of time, but in all actuality it doesn't. So by using all of the functions that GradeCam provides, I was able to transform my room into a place where I'm giving constant feedback, and I'm tracking that feedback every single minute of every single day. And it's not creating any more time for me. It's actually saving me a lot of time and saving my students a lot of time as well. So I thought about that whole formative versus summative assessment and what I was using feedback for. The research done by Samuels and Wu talks about the use of a book report in an elementary school, and how students who just read the book, did the summative book report, didn't do as well as the students who read the book, did formative assessments every so often within the book. They may have failed those formative assessments miserably. However, by the end of that summative assessment that they eventually took, they actually excelled much higher than the students who purely just did that summative assessment. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's amazing. That is really powerful. How can I do that in my room? So GradeCam provides a lot of different functions, and that I can play around with and use this within my formative assessments as well. So multiple choice, true, false, rubrics with capture areas, using the number grids, which has been great for my math teachers and our SAT teachers. And then everything I can link to a standard. Every single question that I give can link to a standard in any one of these functions. So with formative assessments, what I can do is I give my students practice multiple choice. And as an AP teacher, I always, of course, am kind of bound to those multiple choice questions, but at the same time, that's always still a really great thing to kind of just check in. And what I do with multiple choice, though, is in these formative assessments, I give students that multiple choice five questions. This one happened to be a little bit longer because this was a review piece. But what they do is they take it, they scan it themselves. So that is empowering them in that classroom culture. That is empowering them to just kind of take ownership of their own learning and their own grading, and they love that. And then they mark which questions they missed. They take it back to their seat. They use their resources. They challenge themselves to use their resources to go back and try and master that skill that they didn't do well on the first time. They come back up to the computer, they scan it again, and they realize, okay, wow, I get it now. There it is. And that has been a great empowerment tool for my students. And at the same time, it creates less anxiety because they know it's not something that is punitive. A lot of these pieces don't get put into the grade book because they are just practicing mastering that skill. But at the same time, I have data and they have data. So they understand where they are in their learning. At the same time, what I do is I use open-ended questions. I have conversations. My goal is to have conversations, build a rapport with my students. So what I do is I have conversations with students, but in the back of my mind, I'm linking that conversation to a standard. I'm talking to them about what we're learning in class. And then what I do is I walk away from that and I say, on a scale of 4, 3, 2, 1, where were they in talking to me about that standard and verbalizing what they're learning and what they understand? And I'll mark that. I'll have that standard linked in GradeCam. I'll scan it, and then I have, throughout the week, I have this whole data set of all of these conversations that I've had with that particular student, and by Friday I can say, oh wow, you really got it. Like, you really, from Monday to Friday, you really understood this, and I could see that growth, and here's that growth, and I show it to them. I show them that line. Or I can say, okay, we've talked about this a lot. I'm not exactly sure what the misconception is. Where is that misconception? Let's go back and look at this. And that brings me to that point about using this to find students' strengths and weaknesses and building that collaborative community. That is building acceptance and trust, which is those two pieces of a positive classroom culture. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. So that, of course, all of those formative assessments then brings to those summative assessments. Unit exams, I can scan it immediately. I can then go back. Before students leave the room, it's already in the grade book. So test anxiety gone. They don't have to wait weeks. What did I do? How did I do? They're not going to their next class talking about it and thinking about it all the rest of the day. But at the same time, then I have those standards that before they leave the room, I can capture them and say, hey, we didn't do so well on this. Where did we go wrong? What happened here? And that immediate feedback is going to transform their learning, because students are going to forget when they walk out of the room, but they're not going to forget if I already have that. We don't have to go back to it. We can just keep building. And so I use a lot of the different pieces on my unit exams. I look at it by standard and I show students these standards. I show them all of the data. I want to be as transparent as possible, and I want to give them a skill to show how they can use the data, how they can track their strengths and weaknesses as a class as a whole and as an individual. How are we doing collaborating as a whole, and how are you doing really using your resources as an individual? And so I can do this at the same time with my department as well, and looking at that data, tracking specific students even from year to year, not even just within that year. And then I do a lot of project-based learning. I do a lot of project assessments. Particularly in my, I'm a social studies teacher, but I also teach an English course called AP Seminar, and it's an entire course based on project-based learning. And so what I can do is in the rubric function of GradeCam, every single row on my rubric is then linked to a standard, and I can mark and track, again, where students have met those standards, met that criteria, and use those data reports. Which all brings to student engagement. How can students still be involved in this whole system of grading? And that is by scoring, empowering them to go up and score their own assessments, mark which ones they get wrong, go back, use their resources, challenge themselves, give themselves that self-challenge that a lot of students are a little timid to really try and master that function, and then go back and rescore it and see just how well they did, how well they can use their resources to master those standards. At the same time, using practice multiple choice. Again, taking away, it's practice, it's formative, it's not going in the grade book, you don't have to worry about it, you are just practicing. Every failure is a chance, an opportunity to build yourself, to practice and move on in that weakness. It is not a failure in the sense that we like to talk about it and think about it. But then bringing that to having students analyze and discuss their own data, using those data reports to show to students where are your strengths and where are your weaknesses. To tell them, hey, we are a collaborative community. So if my weakness is your strength, hey, can we have a conversation? Can we talk about this? And this has actually really transformed the culture of my room in the sense that students are having conversations. They're not always coming to me for the answers. They're not always coming to me to ask me, how do I do this or where do I do this? They're going to Timmy over here, or they're going to Susan over here and saying, hey, how did you do this? Because I know that you are stronger in this than me, and maybe I can help you with something else. And having that culture of acceptance and trust, not only with me as the teacher, but with each other, has been incredible to see and has been so valuable. And at the same time, that is a life skill that students need to know. They need to understand that their weaknesses aren't anything bad, it's just a place that they can grow. And that they also have strengths that they can help others with. And so that really is empowering for a student to walk away from the classroom knowing. And so we use, again, those reports to be able to really just show students their growth and how they're doing, linking it to those standards and seeing where they can grow from. So any questions?